The hovercar's autopilot chimed as it descended through the neon-soaked smog layer of New Shanghai's financial district. Marcus Chen dismissed the holographic display with a flick of his wrist and took manual control for the final approach, one of the few analog pleasures he still allowed himself. Below, the city sprawled in vertical layers, the glittering spires of the ultra-wealthy piercing the clouds above, the mid-tiers where most people lived in their climate-controlled pods, and far below, the street level that tourists never saw. The places where real people still existed, his neural implant buzzed, the cheap model, 5 years out of date, that everyone in the family loved to mock. The group chat exploded across his vision in augmented overlays, messages cascading faster than he could dismiss them. Family Lou_private, Vivian has shared a location, Lou Estate, Upper Garden District, Vivian_Lou, cannot wait for grandmother's 80th. The venue is absolutely transcendent, full holographic cherry blossoms and a real gravity fountain. Cherry blossom sparkles gemstone, Brandon_Lou, flying in from the Monaco Climate Refuge. Reminder for certain people, formal neural sync attire required. That means actual designer code, not knockoff algorithms. Face with tears of joy, the laughing emoji hung in Marcus's peripheral vision like a tiny insult. He could have blocked them years ago, filtered their messages into oblivion with a thought. Instead, he screenshot the entire exchange and forwarded it through an encrypted channel to a contact labeled simply ER. The response came instantly, bypassing his implant's usual protocols. Elena had priority access, one of exactly 3 people who did. They're performing again. Want me to bring my serving tray? Smiling face with horns, Marcus allowed himself the ghost of a smile as he typed back with his mind, you know you don't have to keep doing this, are you kidding? It's the most entertainment I get all month. Besides, someone needs to have your back while you're being aggressively humble. That's not a word, I'm making it one. See you Saturday. Don't wear that terrible tie. I like that tie, I know. That's the problem. Blue heart. The blue heart sat in his vision for a moment longer than necessary before he dismissed it. 3 years since Sarah died, and he still didn't know what to do with the small kindnesses Elena offered, the ones that felt like they meant more than kindness. Marcus guided the hovercar past the towering residential spires toward the older part of the mid-tier, where the buildings still had actual windows instead of holographic facades. His townhouse was a relic, real brick, real wood, purchased 20 years ago when this neighborhood was still considered desirable. Now it was just considered quaint, which was another word for poor in a city where your address broadcasted your net worth to anyone with basic facial recognition software. He parked in the private garage, one of the few luxuries he'd kept, and took the physical stairs up to his unit. The door recognized his biometrics and slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, everything was as he'd left it, clean, organized, deliberately minimal. IKEA furniture from before they'd gone fully automated and doubled their prices. Real plants on the windowsill, grown in actual soil, which Vivian had once called charmingly prehistoric before asking if he'd considered getting decorative holoflora instead. Photographs in physical frames, Sarah's face smiling from a dozen different moments, frozen in time before the cancer had hollowed her out. Marcus set his briefcase on the kitchen counter and pulled up the holographic display. The documents materialized in the air, marked with red encryption stamps, confidential, Chen Property Holdings. 47 residential properties across 3 districts. 12 commercial buildings in the new tech corridor. Total portfolio valuation, 89 million yuan, and climbing, his implant chimed. Elena again, this time with a formal meeting request for Monday morning at the office. He accepted it, then pulled up the building's old-fashioned coffee maker, the kind that required actual beans and water and time. While it brewed, he scrolled through the family chat again, watching his cousins perform their lives for each other. Vivian had posted a new video to her public feed, her morning luxury routine. Shot in the marble bathroom of the mansion she and Derek somehow still afforded. 300,000 followers watching her apply 600 yuan face cream while talking about manifestation and abundance. The video cut to Derek in the background, and Marcus caught something in the man's expression, a tightness around the eyes, a forced quality to his smile. He'd seen that look before, in the faces of the people who came to his office 3 months behind on rent, trying to explain why this time would be different. Brandon's feed was worse, constant updates from exotic locations, beautiful women hanging on his arm, expensive meals tagged with #blessed and #living my best life. The metadata was public if you knew where to look: massive credit utilization, multiple high-interest loans, a condo with mortgage payments that would have made Marcus's accountant weep. Both of them were drowning, and neither would ever admit it. Marcus's coffee finished brewing. He poured it into Sarah's favorite mug, a chipped ceramic thing she'd bought at a street market their first year together, and took it to the window. Outside, the city hummed with its endless activity: delivery drones weaving through traffic lanes, holographic advertisements painting the sky with promises, people moving through their lives in their own separate bubbles of augmented reality. His implant pinged with a different notification. A message from Grandmother Lou, text only. No translation software. Come to tea tomorrow. Alone, we need to talk. The 4 words that meant everything was about to change. Monday morning arrived with the artificial sunrise that the city projected onto the smog layer. The real sun hadn't been visible in New Shanghai for 15 years. Marcus dressed in his usual understated style: dark slacks, simple shirt, a jacket that was well made but years out of fashion. He wore Sarah's watch, the vintage Patek Philippe that her grandfather had given her. It looked worn and simple, the kind of thing people assumed was a cheap knockoff of the real thing. Only a true watch collector would have recognized it as worth more than most of the family's hovercars combined. The office of Chen Property Holdings occupied 3 floors of a mid-tier commercial building in the old financial district. The lobby was professional but deliberately unpretentious: real wood paneling instead of holographic displays, human receptionists instead of AI concierges, printed business cards instead of neural handshakes. Marcus had designed it that way intentionally. He wanted people to underestimate him. Elena was already in the conference room when he arrived, her holographic displays floating in 3 dimensions around her seat. She wore a sharp charcoal suit that made her look every inch the CFO she was, her dark hair pulled back in a style that was all business. But when she looked up and saw him, something softened in her expression. "Coffee's already brewing," she said. "The good stuff, not the synthetic garbage from the lobby. You're trying to spoil me. Someone has to. You certainly won't do it yourself." She dismissed her displays with a gesture. "Sit down. We need to talk about your family before Saturday." Marcus settled into the chair across from her, accepting the coffee she'd already poured. "That sounds ominous." "That's because it is." Elena pulled up a new set of displays, financial records rendered in sharp detail. Vivian missed last month's mortgage payment on the estate. Brandon's 3 weeks late on his condo, and that's the 3rd time this year. Your aunt's restaurant is bleeding money, she's 2 months behind on commercial rent. And your uncle's tech startup just burned through its last round of funding. Marcus studied the numbers, his expression neutral. "Send the standard reminders." "I already did." They ignored them. Elena leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Marcus, you own the building Vivian lives in. You hold the note on Brandon's condo. Half your family is in debt to you, and they treat you like you're the failure. When are you going to stop protecting them? It's complicated." "It's really not." Elena's voice sharpened. "They humiliate you at every gathering. They make jokes about your clothes, your car, your life choices. Vivian literally called me your charity case cleaning lady at last year's New Year party. And you just take it. I owe grandmother everything. She helped me and Sarah when we were starting out. If keeping quiet makes her happy, your wife has been dead for 3 years. The words came out harder than Elena probably intended, and she immediately softened. I'm sorry. That was cruel. But Marcus, Sarah wouldn't want this. She'd tell you to stand up for yourself. Marcus looked down at his coffee, at the dark surface reflecting the room's lights. How would you know what Sarah would want? The silence stretched between them, charged with things neither of them had said. Finally, Elena spoke, her voice quiet but firm, because I've read every letter she wrote during her treatment. You keep them in the locked drawer in your desk. Don't look surprised, I'm your CFO, I have access to everything. She wrote about you, about who you were and who she hoped you'd become. She wrote about legacy and impact and not wasting your life trying to make small people feel big. Elena reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of his. She wrote that she hoped someday you'd find someone who understood that true wealth isn't what you hoard, it's what you give away. Someone who'd kick your ass when you were being too noble for your own good. Their eyes met, and Marcus saw something there he'd been avoiding for months, years, maybe. A patience that was finally wearing thin. A hope that was beginning to look like hurt. Elena, don't. She pulled her hand back, professional mask sliding into place. We have work to do. Next item, the shelter project. They spent the next 2 hours reviewing the foundation's activities. St. Augustine's homeless shelter had received another anonymous donation, this one covering their winter heating costs and funding a new job training program. Marcus had quietly bankrolled a dozen people through technical certification courses, never asking for recognition, never expecting gratitude. Just doing what needed to be done. Deshawn got hired, Elena reported, pulling up a testimonial video. He starts Monday at a tech repair shop. Says he wants to thank his anonymous benefactor. On the screen, a young man with bright eyes and a new haircut spoke directly to the camera. Whoever you are, you changed my life. I was sleeping in my car 6 months ago. Now I have a job, an apartment, a future. I'm going to pay this forward someday. I promise. Marcus watched the video, and something tightened in his chest. This was why he did it. Not for the recognition, not for the tax breaks his financial advisor kept pushing, but for this. For the moments when someone's life pivoted from desperation to hope. You're crying, Elena said softly. Marcus touched his face, surprised to find it wet. I'm not, you are. And it's okay. She stood, walked around the table, and did something she'd never done before, pulled him into a hug. It was brief, professional enough to maintain plausible deniability, but the warmth of it lingered long after she'd returned to her seat. Your wife was right about you. You're too good for this family. They're still my family, then they should treat you like it. That evening, Marcus drove to St. Augustine's for his weekly volunteer shift. The shelter occupied an old warehouse in the street-level district, where the city's infrastructure was still analog and the people still used doors instead of neural access portals. Father Mike greeted him at the entrance, his weathered face creasing into a smile. Marcus. Right on time as always. We've got a full house tonight, cold front coming through, everyone's heading inside. They spent 3 hours serving meals, and Marcus knew everyone by name. Chen, who used to be a software engineer before the market crashed. Maria, who was saving every yuan to bring her daughter over from the climate refuge zones. Old Mr. Zhang, who'd lost everything in the housing collapse but still came to volunteer in the kitchen because he said idle hands made for an idle heart. These were his people, Marcus thought. Not the ones who measured worth in followers and net worth and neural implant generations. These were the ones who understood that dignity didn't come from what you owned but from how you treated others when you had nothing to gain. Hey, Mr. Chen. Deshawn appeared, wearing a name tag from his new job. I wanted to thank you in person. I know you're the one who paid for my certification. Marcus started to deny it, but Deshawn held up a hand. Father Mike told me. Said you made him promise not to tell, but he figured you needed to hear this. You saved my life, man. I'm not going to waste it. They embraced, and Marcus felt the weight of it, the responsibility of having the power to change lives and the burden of knowing how many more needed changing. When Deshawn left, Father Mike pulled Marcus aside. Your anonymous donation covered our heating bill for winter. I know you hate thanks, but I'm thanking you anyway. You're a good man, Marcus Chen. Don't let anyone tell you different. Marcus drove home through the neon-soaked darkness, his mind churning. Tomorrow was tea with Grandmother Lou, and he knew what was coming. She'd been dropping hints for months, ever since the last family gathering when Vivian had made that crack about Marcus probably living in a storage unit. His townhouse felt emptier than usual that night. He stood in the bedroom, looking at Sarah's photograph, the one from their wedding day, when they'd promised each other that they'd build something meaningful. Something that mattered more than money. I don't know if I'm ready, he said to the photograph, his voice barely a whisper. For any of it. Standing up to them feels like proving I care what they think. And Elena. He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. His implant chimed. A message from Elena, can't sleep either. Coffee tomorrow before the disaster? My treat, Marcus smiled despite the knot in his stomach. You buying me coffee feels wrong on principle, then let me do something that feels right. Trust me tomorrow. Please. He stared at the message for a long time, at that blue heart she'd sent earlier, at all the small moments of care she'd offered over the past 3 years. Sarah had been gone for so long, but her absence still shaped the space around him like a gravity well he couldn't escape. Okay, he typed back. I trust you. The response came immediately, finally. Don't wear the terrible tie. Wednesday evening found Marcus in his usual chair at the grief support group, a dozen other people arranged in a circle in the basement of a community center. Some faces he'd known for years, others were new, fresh wounds still learning how to exist around the holes their loved ones had left. When his turn came, Marcus spoke slowly, carefully. Some days I still reach for my phone to tell her something. 3 years, and I still forget she's not there. My family thinks I failed because I don't show off. But Sarah and I chose differently. We chose impact over image. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I think I'm starting to realize that honoring her memory doesn't mean living in the past. It means living the values we shared. Even if that makes me look weak to people who measure strength in all the wrong ways. After the meeting, a newcomer approached him, a woman who'd lost her husband in an industrial accident. How do you do it? She asked. How do you keep going? Marcus thought about Elena, about the shelter, about Deshawn's face when he'd talked about his future. You find new things to care about. New people who need you. And maybe, if you're lucky, you let new people care about you too. Thursday morning brought the meeting with his financial advisor, a sharply dressed man named Wei who managed Marcus's charitable foundation. The holographic displays showed last year's giving, 3.2 million yuan to cancer research, homeless services, education programs. Enough money to change hundreds of lives, distributed quietly, without fanfare. You could reduce your tax burden significantly if you just publicize this, Wei said, not for the first time. A single press release, some social media posts, maybe a public appearance or two. The optics alone would, Marcus cut him off. The point isn't recognition. What's next? Wei sighed and moved on, but Marcus could see the frustration in his face. Everyone wanted him to play the game, to perform his wealth like his cousins did, to turn his giving into a personal brand. They didn't understand that the moment he did that, it would stop being about the people he helped and start being about him. Friday afternoon found Marcus at a Target in the mid-tier shopping district, pushing an actual physical cart through the aisles. He was buying supplies for the shelter, bulk toilet paper, soap, socks, the unglamorous necessities that kept people dignified. His cart was nearly full when someone called his name. Marcus? Marcus Chen, he turned to find David Wu, a former Stanford classmate who'd gone on to found one of the major neural interface companies. David was dressed in the latest smart fabric suit, his neural implant so advanced it was barely visible, his whole presence screaming success. David's eyes swept over Marcus, the worn jeans, the faded jacket, the ancient cart full of bargain items, and something shifted in his expression. Embarrassment? Pity? Whatever it was, Marcus had seen it before. Hey, David. Good to see you. Yeah, you too, man. I've got a meeting. Great seeing you. David practically fled, leaving Marcus standing alone in the aisle with his cart of toilet paper and his comfortable anonymity. He could have said something. Could have mentioned the property portfolio, the foundation, the fact that his net worth was probably comparable to David's despite the different presentations. But what would be the point? Let David think what he wanted. Let them all think what they wanted. Besides, Marcus thought as he continued shopping, true wealth was being able to push a cart through Target on a Friday afternoon without caring who saw you. That evening, Elena came to his townhouse with Thai takeout, his favorite, and they sat on his old couch reviewing the plan for grandmother's party. Okay, so the usual arrangement? Elena said around a mouthful of pad thai. I arrive separately, play the humble assistant. And we watch them all perform their successful lives while quietly knowing the truth. Elena, you really don't have to do this. It's humiliating for you. She set down her food and turned to face him fully, and suddenly the space between them felt charged in a way that made Marcus's pulse quicken. Listen to me very carefully, Marcus Chen. I have watched you donate more money in a single month than most people earn in a lifetime. I've seen you cry with families you've helped save from foreclosure. I've watched you honor your wife's memory by living her values every single day, never once compromising your principles for approval or recognition. She moved closer, her voice dropping to something intimate and fierce. Your cousin's opinions? They're dust to me. Background noise. I do this because when the moment is right, and your grandmother promised me it's coming, watching their faces will be the most satisfying thing I've ever experienced. The air between them felt heavy with unsaid things. Marcus looked at her, really looked, and saw not just his CFO, not just his friend, but a woman who'd been patiently waiting for him to see what was right in front of him. Sarah would have liked you, he said quietly. She always said I needed someone who'd kick my ass when I was being too nice. Elena's smile was soft but her eyes held steel. I would have liked her too. She set an impossibly high standard. A pause, deliberate and weighted. But I'm patient. And I play the long game. Their faces were close now, close enough that Marcus could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath. 3 years of careful distance, of professional boundaries. Of mourning that had gradually transformed into something else. Something that felt like possibility. Then Elena pulled back, breaking the moment but not the tension. Saturday, she said. Whatever happens at that party, I've got your back. Trust me? I trust you. Good. Now finish your food before it gets cold. And Marcus? Don't wear the terrible tie. Saturday morning arrived with artificial sunshine and the weight of inevitability. Marcus stood in his bedroom, adjusting the Tom Ford suit that Sarah had bought him 8 years ago, slightly dated now but still elegant, still well-made. He wore her watch, the Patek Philippe that looked worn and simple but carried more value than anyone would guess. He studied himself in the mirror and saw a man caught between two worlds, the one he'd chosen, based on values and impact, and the one his family demanded, based on performance and prestige. His neural implant displayed the route to grandmother Lou's estate in the Upper Garden District, where the air was filtered and the gravity was slightly reduced for comfort and the cost of entry was measured in tens of millions. His 2013 Honda hover car, ancient by current standards but meticulously maintained, lifted off from the garage and merged into traffic. The drive took 40 minutes, moving through the city's vertical layers, past the endless towers and holographic advertisements and delivery drones. When he finally reached the estate district, his Honda looked like a museum piece among the gleaming new vehicles crowding the private roads. The Liu estate sprawled across 2 acres of real land, an unthinkable luxury in New Shanghai, with actual trees and grass and a house that combined traditional architecture with modern smart home technology. The circular driveway was already packed with luxury vehicles: Mercedes Graviton series, BMW hover variants, a Maserati with active camouflage, 2 Teslas with the latest autonomous systems. His Honda settled among them like a shabby relative at a wealthy family's table. The valets, real humans, another luxury, openly stared. One of them, young and clearly new, said loudly enough to be heard, "Uber driver parking is around back." His colleague elbowed him quiet, but the damage was done. Marcus parked his car himself and walked toward the entrance, hearing their whispered comments trailing behind him like ghosts of derision. Inside, the estate had been transformed for the celebration. Holographic cherry blossoms floated through the air on programmed paths, their petals dissolving into sparkles of light before regenerating. A gravity fountain in the center of the main room sent water flowing upward in impossible spirals, each droplet catching the light like a diamond. Every surface gleamed with wealth and careful curation. This was Vivian's work, her Instagram feed made manifest. The family had already gathered, a collection of Liu relatives dressed in their finest smart fabrics and designer neural sync attire that could change colors and patterns with a thought. Vivian held court near the gravity fountain, her dress shifting through subtle gradients of pink and gold, her every gesture perfectly calculated for the cameras she had positioned around the room. Brandon stood with a group of men, his suit broadcasting his company's logo in subtle pulses, his arm around his girlfriend Amber, a model whose face was so perfectly symmetrical it could only be the result of expensive genetic therapy. When Marcus entered, the room's energy shifted. Conversations didn't stop, exactly, but they modulated, voices rising slightly, laughter becoming more pointed, people positioning themselves to make sure he saw their reactions. Vivian noticed him first. "Oh look, everyone! Marcus made it. We were worried you couldn't afford the hover fuel." Her voice carried across the room, designed for maximum audience impact. Polite laughter rippled through the assembled relatives. People who'd known Marcus his entire life, who'd watched him grow up, who were smiling at his expense because it cost them nothing and earned them social capital with Vivian. Brandon detached himself from his group and approached with a drink in hand. His smile sharp. "Marcus. Good to see you, cousin. Hey, I've been meaning to ask, are you still doing that property manager thing? Or did you finally upgrade to building superintendent?" More laughter from the crowd. "I just closed a 50 million yuan deal at the bank. You wouldn't understand the pressure of real finance, but maybe I can explain it to you sometime." He clapped Marcus on the shoulder with the casual condescension of someone who believed his own performance. Marcus kept his voice level, quiet. "I'm happy for your success, Brandon. How's the condo working out?" Something flickered in Brandon's eyes, a momentary tightness, before the smile returned. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Location's everything, right? You'd know all about that." Then Elena arrived. She'd entered through the service entrance as planned, dressed in a simple black dress with a white apron, carrying a tray of champagne flutes. She kept her eyes down, her posture subservient, playing the role they'd rehearsed. But Marcus caught the gleam in her expression, the barely suppressed excitement of someone about to watch a carefully laid plan unfold. Vivian intercepted her immediately, her influencer instincts recognizing fresh content. "Oh, Marcus brought his cleaning lady. How quaint. What's your name, honey?" Elena performed a perfect show of deference. Elena, ma'am. I help Mr. Chen with his home. How sweet. Vivian's voice dripped with condescension. Marcus, I hope you're at least paying her minimum wage. Oh wait, she lowered her voice to a stage whisper, can you even afford that? The family laughed, and Marcus felt Elena's eyes on him, silently asking if he wanted to break. Not yet, her tiny headshake said. Not yet. Across the room, Grandmother Lou sat in a high-backed chair, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. When she caught Marcus's gaze, she gave the smallest nod. The pieces were in position. The performance had reached its crescendo. And somewhere in the quantum uncertainty of the moment, everything was about to change. The dining room could have seated 50 people comfortably. But Grandmother Lou had insisted on intimacy. 30 family members arranged around a table carved from reclaimed teak, each place setting worth more than Marcus's monthly grocery budget. Holographic place cards floated above each seat, names rendered in elegant calligraphy that shifted through rainbow hues. Marcus found his card at the far end, nearest the kitchen door, where the servers would brush past him with each course. Elena, of course, had no card at all. She stood against the wall with the other staff, her tablet tucked against her hip, her face a perfect mask of professional deference. The first course arrived on magnetic levitation trays that floated silently to each diner, seared scallops with microgreens and a phone that probably had some pretentious name Marcus couldn't pronounce. The Michelin-starred chef Vivian had hired was visible through the kitchen's transparent wall, orchestrating his team with the precision of a conductor. 300 yuan per plate, Marcus knew. He'd helped Grandmother Lou review the contract, though she'd never mentioned that detail to the family. Derek, Vivian's husband, launched into a story about their second home in Aspen before anyone had taken a bite. His voice carried that particular pitch of someone who needed everyone to hear him, the volume of insecurity masked as confidence. The powder this season has been absolutely transcendent, Derek said, his smart fabric suit shifting to display subtle mountain vistas across his shoulders. We're thinking of upgrading to the platinum membership tier. The regular access just doesn't provide the exclusivity we've grown accustomed to. Vivian touched his arm with practiced affection. Marcus, you should visit sometime. Oh wait, her face arranged itself into an expression of concern so fake it could have been generated by AI. Do you ski? That's probably outside your budget. But maybe you could come in the summer? The hiking is supposed to be lovely, and it's much more affordable. Brandon leaned forward from his position mid-table, his neural implant glowing faintly as he recorded the conversation for later posting. I don't think Marcus does vacations, Viv. When you're working round the clock just to make rent on a mid-tier townhouse, he let the sentence hang, inviting others to fill in the implications. Marcus cut a scallop with precise movements, his hands steady despite the heat building in his chest. I manage fine, Brandon. Thank you for your concern, Aunt Melissa, who'd made her fortune in real estate by convincing people they needed bigger houses than they could afford, set down her fork with the delicate clink of expensive silverware. Marcus? Honey, I keep telling you, I could find you something better. Something more impressive. First impressions matter in life. Your current place, while clean, it sends the wrong message about where you are in life. Elena moved past Marcus's chair to refill water glasses, the crystal pitcher catching the holographic cherry blossoms that still drifted through the air on their programmed paths. She muttered just loud enough for him to hear, first impressions, rich coming from someone who's never met a property she couldn't overvalue by 40%. Marcus hid his smile by taking a sip of water. Under the table, he felt Elena's hand brush against his shoulder for just a fraction of a second, a gesture of solidarity invisible to everyone else. The second course materialized on its floating trays, artisanal salads with edible flowers and a dressing that had probably been aged in oak barrels or blessed by monks or some other ridiculous marketing angle. Cousin Jennifer, whose husband was a neurosurgeon who'd pioneered some new technique that everyone pretended to understand, shifted her attention to Marcus with the focused intensity of a hunter who'd spotted prey. "Marcus, are you seeing anyone?" Jennifer's voice oozed sympathy. "It's been 3 years since Sarah passed, God rest her soul, but you really need to move on. A man needs a partner in life. Although..." She looked around the table as if gathering opinions from the assembled family. "Finding someone who'd accept your lifestyle might be challenging. Most women these days expect a certain standard of living." Vivian seized the opening like a lawyer who'd just caught a witness in a contradiction. "Maybe someone practical. A teacher or a nurse, someone used to being frugal. Someone who wouldn't mind shopping at Target and driving ancient cars. There are women out there with simple expectations, I'm sure." The fork Elena was carrying slipped from her fingers and clattered against the floor, the sound cutting through the ambient music like a gunshot. Every head turned. She dropped to her knees immediately, her apology fluid and practiced. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Please forgive my clumsiness." As she bent to retrieve the fork, passing within inches of Marcus's chair, she whispered, "I'm a CFO with an MBA from Chicago and I'm standing right here listening to them discuss your romantic prospects like you're a charity case." "The irony is killing me." Marcus kept his face neutral, but he whispered back as she rose, "Patience. Grandma promised." Elena's response was barely audible as she moved away. "Your grandmother is a genius. I'm just a woman with a temper and access to all their financial records. Let me know when you want me to start sharing." Their eyes met for a half-second, and Marcus saw the fire banked there, the professional restraint holding back something much more volatile. Something that made his pulse quicken in a way he hadn't felt since Sarah died. The main course arrived with theatrical precision, dry-aged steaks that had been grown in laboratory vats from heritage cattle DNA, truffle risotto made from real black truffles that cost more per gram than gold, roasted vegetables that had been harvested from Grandmother Lou's private rooftop garden. The gravity fountain in the adjacent room cast shifting light patterns across the table, each droplet's trajectory calculated by quantum computers to create maximum aesthetic impact. Brandon stood, his wine glass catching the light. His neural implant broadcast the moment to his social feeds, the red recording indicator visible at his temple for anyone who knew what to look for. His 300,000 followers would see this toast, though they wouldn't see the mounting credit card debt that kept him awake at 3 a.m. "I'd like to propose a toast." Brandon's voice carried the rehearsed quality of someone who'd practiced this moment. "To Grandmother Lou, a woman who came to this country with nothing but determination and built an empire. You taught us that success is everything, that wealth is how we measure our impact on the world. That visible achievement matters." Grandmother Lou's expression shifted, something dark moving behind her eyes, but she didn't interrupt. Brandon continued, gaining momentum, "You showed us the American dream still exists for those willing to work for it. And most of us," his pause was deliberate, his eyes finding Marcus at the far end of the table, "have honored that legacy by building successful lives, by achieving the kind of visibility and status that proves we learned from the best. To Grandmother, to Grandmother." The chorus echoed around the table, glasses rising in unison, the gesture choreographed by social conditioning and family expectation. Marcus raised his glass silently, his expression neutral. Elena, standing against the wall between two serving stations, caught Grandmother Lou's eye across the room. The old woman gave the smallest nod, a gesture so subtle Marcus almost missed it. But Elena saw it, and her posture shifted imperceptibly, a boxer moving into fighting stance. Dessert was approaching when Vivian stood, her smart fabric dress shifting to a soft pink that made her glow in the ambient light. Derek rose beside her, both of them beaming with the kind of joy that demanded an audience. Vivian's hand rested on her still flat stomach in a gesture of such calculated maternal tenderness that Marcus knew she'd practiced it in front of a mirror. "Everyone. Vivian's voice carried across the room, silencing conversations. Derek and I have an announcement. The dramatic pause was perfectly timed, letting anticipation build. Marcus could see people checking their neural implants, preparing to record, getting ready to share this moment with their followers within seconds. We're pregnant. Baby Chin Morrison arriving in July, the table erupted. Champagne appeared on floating trays, glasses already filled, bubbles rising in perfect helixes. People stood to embrace Vivian and Derek, congratulations flowing like currency exchanged between social equals. Grandmother Lou smiled, but Marcus noticed it didn't reach her eyes. Then Vivian turned, her gaze finding Marcus at the far end of the table. Her expression shifted to something that looked like compassion but felt like a blade. Uncle Marcus, I hope you'll be part of our child's life. We want them to know all their family. Her voice dropped into a tone of concern that everyone could hear. Though I have to be honest, and I'm only saying this because I care, I hope they never end up like you. The room's temperature seemed to drop. Conversations died. People who'd been standing slowly sat back down. Vivian's voice turned sharp, cutting. No ambition. No success. Nothing substantial to offer a family. Living in that sad little mid-tier townhouse, driving that embarrassing antique car, wearing clothes that are, a decade out of style? At your age, Marcus, you should be established. You should be someone a child could look up to. The table had gone completely silent. This had crossed some invisible line, moved from teasing into territory that made people uncomfortable. But no one stopped her. Vivian continued, emboldened by the lack of opposition. I'm sorry, but someone needs to say it. You're an embarrassment to grandmother's legacy. She built something from absolute nothing, survived the Cultural Revolution, immigrated to a foreign country, learned a new language, built a business empire through pure determination. And you've taken every advantage she provided and turned yourself into nothing. Thank God my child will grow up with real role models. People who understand that in this world, you're either winning or you're losing. She looked at him with an expression of pity so profound it could have been a performance art piece. And Marcus? You're losing, Derek added, his arm around his wife. Harsh but fair, babe. Harsh but fair. Marcus sat very still. His face remained neutral, trained by 3 years of these gatherings to show nothing, reveal nothing, give them no satisfaction. But his hand gripped the fork with enough force that his knuckles went white, the metal bending slightly under the pressure. Around the table, he could see various reactions: embarrassment, agreement, discomfort, a few faces that looked genuinely ashamed but not enough to speak up. Elena took a step forward from her position against the wall. Her servant's mask was slipping, her professional composure cracking like ice under pressure. She looked ready to throw the water pitcher she was holding directly at Vivian's glowing, pregnant face. Then Grandmother Lou stood. The room didn't just go quiet, it went silent with the kind of absolute stillness that preceded earthquakes. At 80 years old, Grandmother Lou stood barely 5 feet tall, her frame slight in the traditional silk dress she'd chosen for her birthday. But her presence filled the room like a physical force, the steel that had carried her across oceans and through revolutions still glinting in her eyes. She spoke first in Mandarin, her voice carrying the accent of her childhood province, then switched to English. Enough. Vivian tried to recover. Grandmother, I didn't mean any disrespect. I just think Marcus needs to hear, you meant every word. Grandmother Lou's voice cut like surgical steel. You all did. She looked around the table at faces that couldn't quite meet her gaze. For 3 years I've watched you mock my Marcus. The kindest of my grandchildren. The one who visited his dying wife every single day in the hospital, who held her hand as she passed, who honored her memory by living the values they built together. She walked slowly toward Marcus's end of the table, her steps measured and deliberate, everyone tracking her movement like prey animals watching a predator. You think wealth is what you wear. What you drive, what you post on the internet for strangers to validate. You've learned nothing from me. Nothing. Her voice carried disappointment so profound it felt like a physical weight. I didn't survive what I survived, didn't sacrifice what I sacrificed, to raise peacocks who strut and preen but have no substance beneath the feathers. She placed her hand on Marcus's shoulder, the gesture both protective and empowering. My boy, I'm sorry. I asked you to stay quiet because I hoped they would grow up, that they would learn to see value beyond performance. They haven't. It's time. Marcus looked up at his grandmother, then across the room at Elena, who gave him the smallest nod. Permission. Encouragement. The signal they'd been waiting for. Marcus stood slowly, his movements careful and controlled. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but carried clearly in the absolute silence. Vivian, congratulations on the pregnancy. Truly. I hope the baby brings you joy and helps you understand what actually matters in life. He paused, letting the words settle. Because that 2.3 million yuan house certainly isn't bringing you financial security. Vivian's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, then recognition, then a dawning horror as her brain processed the implications. Excuse me, Marcus's voice remained calm, factual. Almost gentle. Your mortgage. 8,500 yuan a month, 30-year fixed rate at 5.2%. You've missed 2 payments. You're currently in default. The blood drained from Vivian's face so rapidly she looked like she might faint. How do you, Brandon? Marcus shifted his attention to his cousin, who'd half risen from his chair. I admire the Maserati. Stunning vehicle. Beautiful engineering. But your condo, the one on Riverside Drive with the view of the river, you're 3 weeks late on the payment. 4,200 yuan monthly, balloon payment due in 2027. Your current equity position is negative 43,000 yuan. Brandon stood fully now. His posture aggressive, his face flushing. What the hell are you talking about? How would you even know? Elena stepped forward, shedding the servant persona like a snake shedding skin. Her voice, when she spoke, was crisp and professional and carried the unmistakable authority of someone who'd spent years commanding boardrooms. Allow me to introduce myself properly, since it seems there's been some confusion about my role. She pulled her tablet from her hip and tapped a command. The holographic display that Vivian had set up earlier for a baby photo slideshow flickered to life, but instead of ultrasound images, it showed a professional corporate presentation rendered in sharp 3-dimensional detail. Elena Rodriguez, Chief Financial Officer of Chen Property Holdings, LLC. MBA from University of Chicago, 15 years of experience in real estate finance and portfolio management. Pleased to finally meet you all as myself rather than as the help. The room went dead silent, the kind of silence that felt like pressure in the ears, like being underwater. Every eye fixed on the display as the first slide materialized. Chen Property Holdings, Portfolio Overview. Elena's voice could have been presenting to investors, cold and factual and devastating in its precision. Total assets under management, 89 million yuan. Properties owned, 47 residential units across 3 districts. 12 commercial buildings in the New Tech Corridor. Annual revenue, 8.7 million yuan. Charitable giving in 2024, 3.2 million yuan. She paused, letting those numbers sink in like stones in still water. Founder and CEO, Marcus Chen. The second slide appeared, Family Property Holdings. Elena walked to the side of the display, her body language commanding attention, controlling the room with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Vivian Chen Morrison. 2847 Maple Grove Estates, Upper Garden District. Purchase price, 2.3 million yuan. Original financing through Westbridge Lending, a predatory lender that specialized in high-risk borrowers with excellent credit presentation. That loan was acquired by Chin Property Holdings in 2022 when Westbridge collapsed under federal investigation for exploitative practices. Elena's eyes found Vivian's. Current loan status, 61 days past due. Standard foreclosure proceedings begin at 90 days. You have 29 days remaining. Vivian's face had gone from pale to gray, her hand clutching Derek's arm with enough force to leave marks. Elena continued with the systematic precision of someone conducting surgery. Brandon Chen. For O2, Riverside Drive, Unit 14C, Premium View. Purchase price, 987,000 yuan. Original financing through Harbor Trust Mortgage, which sold their portfolio to Chen Property Holdings in 2023 during their liquidity crisis. She let that information hang for a moment. Current status, 23 days past due. This is your fourth late payment this year. Under standard lending practices, you'd already be in technical default. Brandon sat down hard, his aggressive posture collapsing like a building losing structural support. Elena moved through the slideshow with ruthless efficiency. Aunt Melissa's restaurant property, 3 months behind on commercial rent. Uncle James's tech startup office space, facing eviction. For family members' properties, all held in Marcus's portfolio, each revelation a precision strike that left its target reeling. The third slide appeared, Marcus Chen, professional summary. The display showed credentials that seemed to belong to a different person than the quiet man in the dated suit at the end of the table. Stanford MBA, graduated top 5% of class. Founded Chen Property Holdings at age 26 with late wife Sarah Chen. Built portfolio from 3 distressed properties to 59 premium holdings over 12 years. Specialization in ethical lending practices and foreclosure prevention programs. Personal net worth, 47 million yuan. The room existed in a state of shocked suspension, time seeming to slow as brains struggled to reconcile the information on the screen with their understanding of reality. Aunt Melissa finally spoke. Her voice small and confused. Marcus, you're a multimillionaire? All this time, Marcus's voice remained calm, but something had shifted in it, a core of steel that had always been there but had been hidden under layers of deliberate humility. Wealth was never the point. Sarah and I built the company to help people, not to perform for strangers on social media. We bought distressed mortgages from predatory lenders and refinanced them at fair rates. We've prevented over 200 foreclosures. We live modestly because we'd rather fund cancer research, his voice caught, just slightly, and homeless services and education programs than buy cars we don't need to impress people whose opinions don't matter. Vivian, desperate now, grasping, but you drive that ancient Honda. You shop at Target. You live in that tiny townhouse with the IKEA furniture. How is any of that consistent with? Elena cut her off, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. He drives a reliable vehicle that gets excellent mileage and doesn't require expensive maintenance. He shops where he can maximize his charitable giving budget by minimizing personal expenses. And that tiny townhouse? Paid in full, zero debt, appreciated in value by 400% since purchase. Unlike your McMansion that you're about to lose because you spent more energy choosing Instagram filters than reading your mortgage documents. Brandon stood again, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment or some volatile mixture. You've been secretly holding our mortgages? That's predatory. Marcus's calm cracked, not into anger but into something more dangerous, honest emotion finally breaking through years of careful control. His voice rose for the first time anyone could remember. Predatory? Predatory? The word echoed in the high-ceilinged room. Brandon, your original lender was going to foreclose on you last year. You were 90 days behind, facing legal action, about to lose everything. I bought your loan and restructured it at 2% below market rate. I've been paying your HOA fees out of my own pocket when you missed them so you wouldn't face property liens. His voice cracked with the weight of 3 years of accumulated hurt, I didn't tell you because I knew you'd see it as charity and hate me even more than you already did." Elena's professional mask cracked completely, her fury breaking through. Chen Property Holdings has the lowest foreclosure rate in the entire state. "Your CEO," she gestured at Marcus with something that looked like pride and rage combined, "personally reviews every single late account. He's given more second chances than any lender I've ever worked with. You want to call him predatory? The man who literally cried on my shoulder last month because he finally had to foreclose on a family after giving them 18 months of grace and exhausting every possible alternative." Her voice dropped to something quieter but somehow more intense. "You people wouldn't know real wealth if it served you dinner and refilled your water glasses." Marcus turned away from the table, overwhelmed, needing air or space or something other than this room full of shocked faces and dawning realizations. He walked toward the terrace doors, his movements stiff with the effort of holding himself together. Elena followed without hesitation, catching his arm as he reached for the door handle. They stepped outside together, the night air cool against skin heated by stress and revelation. The terrace overlooked the city's vertical sprawl, layers of light stretching to the horizon. A million lives lived in ignorance of this small family drama playing out in a mansion in the sky. Behind them, the party noise was muted, the family's shocked conversations reduced to white noise. Marcus leaned against the railing, his hands gripping the metal hard enough to hurt. "I shouldn't have come. This was a mistake. Grandmother meant well, but I'd just destroyed what was left of these relationships. Made everything worse. Proven that I do care what they think, which makes me as shallow as." Elena grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. "Marcus Chen, you listen to me very carefully. For 2 years I have watched you carry the weight of everyone else's assumptions and judgments. For 2 years I played housekeeper at these gatherings because you were too kind, too decent, too concerned about their feelings to defend yourself." "Elena, no." Her grip tightened, her eyes fierce. "You don't get to retreat now. Do you know what it's like watching the man you—" She stopped herself, the words catching in her throat. "Watching someone you respect more than anyone in the world be treated like garbage by people who aren't qualified to shine his shoes? Do you have any idea how much restraint it took not to throw that water pitcher at Vivian's glowing pregnant face?" The terrace was lit by string lights that cast soft shadows across Elena's features, making her eyes look darker, more intense. The gravity fountain was visible through the windows behind them, water flowing upward in impossible spirals, defying physics the same way this moment seemed to defy everything Marcus thought he understood. "Elena, what are you saying?" Her professional armor, the careful distance she'd maintained for 3 years, cracked completely. Her voice came out raw and honest. "I'm saying I've been in love with you for 1.5 years. I'm saying I watched you honor your wife's memory so beautifully that it made me love you more, not less. I'm saying that when you finally finish grieving, if you ever fully finish, I want to be the one you see. Not as your CFO. Not as your friend who plays servant at family gatherings. As the woman who knows exactly who you are and loves every humble, generous, frustratingly noble part of you." Marcus stared at her, his mind trying to process words that seemed to come from an alternate timeline. You're in love with me?" Elena laughed, the sound catching on tears she was trying not to shed. "You brilliant, oblivious man. Why do you think I've been showing up to these torture sessions? For the holographic appetizers, but I'm still broken. Sarah's only been gone 3 years. I still miss her every single day. I still reach for my phone to text her things. I'm not whole enough for someone like you to." Elena's thumb stroked his cheekbones, gentle despite the intensity in her eyes. "I know. And I'm not asking you to stop missing her. Sarah was part of making you who you are, and I wouldn't want you to forget that. I'm just asking." She hesitated, vulnerable for the first time since he'd known her. "When you're ready to risk your heart again, consider risking it with me." The air between them felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. Marcus's hands came up slowly to cover hers where they held his face, his touch uncertain but deliberate. "Elena Rodriguez, you are the bravest person I know. And I've been terrified to admit this, but when I think about the future, when I let myself imagine it, you're in every version." Their foreheads touched, the gesture more intimate than a kiss, trembling with 3 years of accumulated possibility. Marcus could feel Elena's breath against his lips, smell the subtle perfume she wore, feel the warmth of her skin through her gloves. Then Grandmother Lou's voice cut through the moment from inside. "Marcus. Elena. Stop making googly eyes and come finish this." "We're not done yet." They broke apart, laughing through tears, the tension releasing into something lighter. Elena wiped her eyes, trying to restore some semblance of her professional demeanor. Marcus caught her hand before she could pull fully away. "After this disaster ends, would you have dinner with me? Not as my CFO. As your date?" Elena's smile could have powered the city below. "God, yes. Finally. I thought you'd never ask." They kissed, soft and brief but full of promise, 3 years of patience rewarded in a single moment. When they pulled apart, Elena was smirking, her confidence restored. "Now let's go back in there and make your cousin squirm some more. I've been planning my closing statement for months, and I'll be damned if I don't get to deliver it." They walked back inside hand in hand, a statement that didn't go unnoticed by the family still seated in various states of shock around the dining table. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Eyes tracked their joined hands like tracking weapons systems locking onto targets. Elena clapped once, sharp and commanding, the sound cutting through the murmured discussions. "If I could have everyone's attention, please." "We're not finished." The fourth slide appeared on the display, the real cost of materialism. Elena walked them through it with the systematic precision of a prosecutor presenting evidence. Combined debt of the people currently seated at this table, 847,000 yuan in credit cards, car loans, and home equity lines of credit. Combined liquid savings across all households, 23,000 yuan. Average monthly spending on luxury items that depreciate immediately upon purchase, 8,200 yuan per household. She let those numbers hang in the air, watching faces as the mathematics of their own destruction sank in. Marcus's monthly spending on luxury items for personal use, 0. His monthly charitable giving, averaged across the fiscal year, 47,000 yuan. The fifth and final slide appeared, what wealth actually means. Images filled the three-dimensional display, each one a story Elena had witnessed over the years she'd worked alongside Marcus. Marcus at the homeless shelter, serving meals to people who knew his name, his face open and kind. A handwritten thank you letter from Deshawn about his technical certification program, the ink smudged from tears. A photograph of a family Marcus had saved from foreclosure, now thriving, their daughter holding a college acceptance letter. The cancer research laboratory funded by the Chinsera Memorial Foundation, scientists at work hunting for treatments. Receipts for school supplies Marcus had bought for underfunded classrooms. Thousands of yuan spent on pencils and notebooks and hope. Elena's voice softened, losing its prosecutorial edge. "This is what your failure of a cousin has been doing while you leased cars you couldn't afford and bought handbags to photograph for strangers. He's been changing lives. He's been honoring his late wife by living her values every single day. He's been proving that wealth without character is just numbers on a screen." Grandmother Lou stood again, surveying her family with an expression that mixed disappointment and determination. The weight of her 80 years seemed visible in that moment, all the hardship and sacrifice and determination that had carried her across the world and through decades of building something from nothing. "I'm 80 years old today," she said, her voice carrying the weight of lived experience. "I came to America at 22 with $47 in my pocket and a dream that my children would never know hunger. I built my restaurant from nothing, working 18-hour days, sleeping in the storage room, saving every penny, learning a new language while my hands burned from washing dishes. She paused, letting the weight of those memories settle over the room. I did this so my family would have opportunities one never had. But I see now I gave you the wrong lesson. You learned to love money. You didn't learn to love what money can do, what it can mean, who it can help. Her eyes found Marcus. Marcus learned that lesson. Sarah taught him. And Elena understands it too. Vivian, desperate, her voice breaking. Grandmother, we can change. We'll do better. We'll learn. Just give us a chance to. Grandmother Lou held up a hand, silencing her. I'm rewriting my will. Marcus will inherit my estate, not to keep for himself, but to manage as a family foundation. Each of you will have access to this trust, but with conditions. The room went absolutely still, every family member calculating what this meant for their futures, their plans, their carefully constructed lives. You will each spend 6 months working alongside Marcus at St. Augustine's homeless shelter. 3 days a week, minimum 4 hours per shift, serving meals, cleaning facilities, listening to people's stories. You will learn that human beings are not their bank accounts, that dignity doesn't come from designer clothes, that real success is measured in lives improved rather than followers accumulated. Her voice hardened. When you complete this requirement, the foundation will match your annual charitable giving dollar for dollar, up to 50,000 yuan each. Your wealth will be tied to your generosity. Your inheritance will be earned through service. Brandon stood, his voice rising in protest. Grandmother, I can't take 6 months away from my career. I'm a vice president at. Then you don't want the inheritance badly enough, Grandmother Lou said simply. These are my terms. Accept them or don't. But understand that I'm done watching this family value image over impact. Vivian exploded, her composure finally shattering completely, her voice rising to a pitch that made the holographic cherry blossoms flicker. This is insane. You're letting Marcus manipulate you. He's been hiding his wealth for years, secretly buying our mortgages like some kind of puppet master. Playing some sick psychological game to make himself feel superior. Marcus's patience, stretched thin over 3 years of accumulated insults, finally broke. His voice, when he spoke, wasn't loud but it carried a force that silenced everyone. I bought your mortgages to save you. The room froze. Marcus rarely raised his voice, rarely showed anger, rarely let the mask slip enough to reveal the hurt beneath. His voice cracked with emotion held too long in check. Vivian, you were 90 days from foreclosure. The bank was going to auction your house on the courthouse steps. You would have lost everything, been homeless with a baby on the way, your credit destroyed for 7 years minimum. I refinanced you at a loss, took a 30,000 yuan hit on fees and restructuring. To keep that from happening, he turned to Brandon, your original lender was taking you to court. Legal fees alone would have bankrupted you. I bought your debt and absorbed 30,000 in costs to make it go away, to give you a chance to recover. Tears streamed down his face now, 3 years of suppressed hurt finally breaking through. I've been protecting all of you for years while you mocked me at every gathering. While you laughed at my car and my clothes and my life choices. While you treated the woman he glanced at Elena, while you treated someone extraordinary like hired help. I did it because Sarah would have wanted me to. Because grandmother asked me to. Because despite everything, your family, his voice broke completely, but I'm done. I'm done being your safety net while you treat me like garbage. I'm done hiding who I am to make you comfortable in your delusions of superiority. I'm done setting myself on fire to keep you warm when you'd never do the same for me. He turned to Grandmother Lou, his face wet with tears he'd been holding back for years. I'll honor your wishes with the foundation. I'll manage it well and help anyone who genuinely wants to change. But I'm done attending these gatherings. Done pretending their cruelty doesn't hurt. Done sacrificing my dignity for the illusion of family harmony. Elena stepped beside him, her hand finding his, her voice carrying the sharp edge of someone who'd finally had enough. And if Marcus won't say it plainly, I will. You people had something real, someone authentic and kind and genuinely successful by any measure that matters, and you treated him like dirt because he didn't perform wealth the way you do, because he didn't broadcast his success for validation from strangers. You should be ashamed. You should be on your knees grateful that he's still willing to help you after years of treating him like a failure. The room was devastated, several family members openly crying now. Aunt Melissa had her head in her hands. Brandon stared at the table. His recording implant finally turned off. Vivian clutched her stomach as if protecting her unborn child from the truth being spoken. Grandmother Lou approached Marcus, her small hands cupping his tear-stained face with infinite gentleness. Good. Finally you defend yourself. This is the man I raised. This is the man Sarah loved. This is the man who deserves happiness without apology. She looked at Elena, approval clear in her eyes. Take care of my grandson. He's stubborn and too forgiving and needs someone strong enough to protect him from his own kindness. Elena met her gaze steadily. I'm aware of his flaws. But someone has to manage him properly. Might as well be me, Grandmother Lou smiled. Genuine warmth breaking through the steel. You'll do very well. Welcome to the family, the real family. Marcus and Elena turned toward the exit, still holding hands, the weight of 3 years lifting from Marcus's shoulders with each step. Behind them, the family sat in stunned silence, their constructed reality in pieces around them, forced finally to confront the gap between their performance of success and its substance. They stepped into the night together, the city spreading below them in layers of light and life, the future suddenly open in ways Marcus hadn't allowed himself to imagine in 3 long years. Elena's hand was warm in his, solid and real and possible. The door closed behind them, muting the voices of a family beginning the long process of reckoning with truth. Ahead, the hover car waited, and beyond that, a dinner date that felt like the first step into a new version of his life, one where he didn't have to hide anymore. 3 weeks after the revelation at Grandmother Lou's birthday party, Marcus's townhouse had transformed from a refuge of solitude into something else entirely, a workspace cluttered with evidence of shared life. Legal documents for the family foundation covered every surface of his dining table, holographic displays projected financial models against the walls, and coffee cups accumulated in small archaeological layers that marked the passage of hours. Elena had moved through his space so thoroughly that her presence had become part of the architecture, her tablet charging on his kitchen counter, her jacket draped over the back of his couch, her voice filling rooms that had been silent for 3 years. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by paper contracts that required actual signatures because Grandmother Lou distrusted purely digital agreements. Elena sprawled on the couch above him, her bare feet near his shoulder, reviewing documents on her tablet with the focused intensity she brought to everything. The intimacy of the arrangement felt both foreign and inevitable, like his body had been waiting to remember how to exist in proximity to another person. Okay, the foundation is officially established, Elena said, her voice carrying that particular satisfaction she got from completing complex administrative tasks. The Chenlu Family Trust. Your grandmother signed everything this morning, witnessed by 3 lawyers and a notary who I'm pretty sure was terrified of her. Marcus looked up from the document he'd been pretending to read for the past 10 minutes. What about the family? Have they? Elena sighed, the sound carrying weeks of accumulated observation. Mixed results. Aunt Melissa started at the shelter last week. Father Mike says she's actually engaged, not just going through the motions. She spent 2 hours helping a woman navigate the housing assistance application and cried when it got approved. She scrolled through her notes. Brandon and Vivian have been radio silent. No response to any communication, not even automated replies. Cousin Jennifer reached out to apologize formally, sent an actual handwritten letter. which I think might have been a first for her. The others are processing in their various ways. Marcus stared out the window at the city's vertical sprawl, the afternoon light filtering through the smog layer in shades of amber and rust. I shouldn't have exploded like that. Lost control. Made it about my hurt instead of just stating facts. It wasn't. Elena sat up and put her hand over his mouth, her palm warm against his lips. Stop. Right now. You are a human being setting boundaries after 3 years of systematic emotional abuse. That's called healthy behavior, not something to apologize for. She removed her hand, but Marcus caught it before she could pull away completely, interlacing their fingers with the kind of deliberate care that still made his chest tight. The gesture had become natural over the past 3 weeks, his body learning a new language of casual affection that felt both thrilling and terrifying. This thing between us, Marcus said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Are we really doing this? Building something real? Elena shifted closer, her knee pressing against his shoulder. You mean the dating thing? Where we admitted feelings in front of your entire family and have been essentially living in each other's pockets for weeks. That thing? Marcus laughed, the sound still unfamiliar in his own throat after so long. Yeah. That thing. Elena's expression shifted, her professional mask falling away to reveal something more vulnerable. Marcus, I'm all in. You know that. But I need to know, are you dating me because you're actually ready, or because I'm convenient? Because I've been patient and present and I love you, but I'm not a consolation prize. I'm not the woman you settle for because the woman you wanted is gone. Marcus turned to face her fully, setting aside the documents, giving her the complete attention the question demanded. His heart hammered against his ribs, but the words came easier than he'd expected. 3 years ago, the day before Sarah died, she was lucid for about an hour. The morphine had worn off enough that she could focus, could really see me. His voice caught, but he pushed through. She held my hand, she could barely grip anymore, but she held on, and she made me promise something. She said, "Don't you dare mourn me by stopping living. Find someone who challenges you. Someone who won't let you hide behind guilt or grief. Someone who sees you completely, all the broken parts. All the scared parts, and loves you anyway." He reached up to touch Elena's face, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw with a gentleness that still surprised him. I fought falling for you because I thought it meant betraying her memory. Like I was replacing her, erasing her, moving on as if she'd never mattered. But loving you doesn't erase loving her. It's just different. You're not my consolation prize, Elena. You're my second chance at building a life. And I don't want to waste it being afraid. Elena's eyes filled with tears that she tried to blink away, her professional composure cracking like ice under pressure. She pulled him up onto the couch beside her and kissed him, deeper than before. With the certainty of something real beginning rather than the tentative exploration of possibility. When they broke apart, she was smiling against his lips. Good answer, she murmured. Now we need to talk about your wardrobe, because I love you, but we're burning that Stanford t-shirt with the holes in it. It's not vintage, it's biohazard, Marcus laughed. Never. That shirt has sentimental value, it has structural integrity issues and questionable stains. This is non-negotiable, everything's negotiable. I'm a property manager, negotiation is literally my job, not this. The shirt dies or our relationship does. Their playful argument was interrupted by the doorbell, the old-fashioned kind that actually made a sound instead of sending a neural notification. Marcus checked the security display and felt his stomach drop. Brandon stood in the hallway, unshaven and wearing jeans with a plain hoodie instead of his usual smart fabric designer everything. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, like someone had turned down his brightness settings. Marcus opened the door without speaking, the question implicit in his posture. Can we talk? Brandon's voice was rough, and used to asking rather than demanding. Elena started to gather her things, giving them privacy, but Brandon stopped her with a raised hand. No, stay. Please. You should hear this too. They arranged themselves in the living room with the awkwardness of people who'd hurt each other and didn't yet know how to exist together without armor. Brandon sat in the chair across from the couch, his hands clasped between his knees, his neural implant dark and inactive. The silence stretched until it became almost unbearable. I sold the Maserati, Brandon finally said, the words coming out in a rush. Ended the lease early, took a 15,000 yuan hit. Sold my watch collection, all 8 pieces, including the limited edition Omega I'd been saving for. Broke up with Amber. Marcus leaned forward. Brandon, you didn't have to, let me finish. Brandon's voice cracked. Please. I've been talking to a therapist for 2 weeks now. Dr. Chen over at the mental health clinic on the mid-tier. She's been helping me understand some things about myself that I've been avoiding since Dad died. The mention of their uncle hit Marcus like physical force. Brandon had been 16 when his father had the massive coronary that killed him in 40 seconds, too fast for even emergency medical teleportation to make a difference. You remember his last words to me? Brandon's face contorted with suppressed emotion. I was holding his hand in the hospital. He looked at me and said, take care of the family. Be successful. Then he died. Just like that. 1 second giving me instructions, the next second gone, his voice broke completely. I thought that meant be rich. Be impressive. Show everyone that his death didn't break us. I thought if I just made enough money, earned enough respect, drove the right cars and dated the right women, that I'd finally feel like I deserved to still be alive when he wasn't. Like I'd earned the right to occupy space in the world. Marcus felt his own throat tighten. Elena's hand found his, squeezing gently. I'd been at the shelter for 2 weeks, Brandon continued. Every Tuesday and Thursday, 4-hour shifts like grandmother mandated. Last Thursday this guy came in, probably 40 but looked 60, face like weathered leather, missing half his teeth. He sat across from me while I served his meal, and you know what he did? Brandon looked directly at Marcus, tears streaming freely now. He looked at me with more genuine gratitude than any client I've ever closed a million yuan deal with. He said, thank you, brother. God bless you. Simple as that. And I realized I couldn't remember the last time someone thanked me for being kind instead of being successful. Couldn't remember the last time I felt like I'd done something that mattered beyond my quarterly performance review. Marcus crossed the room and sat on the arm of Brandon's chair, his hand on his cousin's shoulder. I never knew about Dad's last words. I wish you'd told me years ago. We could have, how could I? Brandon looked up, his face raw. You were the one actually living Dad's values, taking care of people, being generous with your money and your time. Building something meaningful. I was just performing success. Buying things to fill up the empty spaces. How could I admit that to you when you were doing everything right? A long silence filled the room, broken only by the ambient hum of the city outside and the software of the air filtration system. Finally, Marcus extended his hand. Start over? Clean slate. Brandon gripped his hand, then pulled him into an embrace that lasted longer than either of them expected. I don't deserve it, but yes. Please. I want to learn how to be the kind of person Dad would have actually been proud of. Elena, watching from the couch with tears tracking down her face, quietly left the room to give them privacy. Marcus heard the door to his bedroom close softly. 6 weeks later, St. Augustine's homeless shelter had become the unlikely epicenter of the Liu family's transformation. The old warehouse had always been functional but spare, efficient rather than welcoming. Now it was beginning to change in small but significant ways. New heating units that actually worked properly. A fresh coat of paint in colors that didn't look institutional. Real art on the walls, created by residents and volunteers working together. Marcus arrived for his usual Thursday shift to find Aunt Melissa organizing a clothing drive in the main hall, her tablet projected against the wall showing an elaborate spreadsheet of donations and distribution. She dropped the designer labels and carefully curated aesthetic in favor of practical clothes and genuine engagement. Her real estate connections had proven surprisingly valuable. Half the donation had come from luxury retailers clearing out last season's inventory. Marcus. She waved him over with real enthusiasm. Look at this, 300 coats, 200 pairs of shoes, all new or nearly new. I got Davidson's department store to partner with us for quarterly donations. They get a tax write-off and positive press, we get consistent supply. Everyone wins. She looked genuinely happy in a way Marcus had never seen during family gatherings, lighter somehow, less burdened by the performance of success. In the kitchen, Vivian was serving meals alongside Derek, her pregnancy now obvious at 6 months. She moved slowly, carefully, her smart fabric maternity dress shifting colors to accommodate her changing form. She was visibly uncomfortable at first, her posture too stiff, her smile too forced, but as Marcus watched over the following weeks, something shifted. One evening he witnessed Vivian sitting with a pregnant woman who'd come in from the street, clearly terrified and alone. Vivian had taken her hand and talked with her for 2 hours, both of them crying, sharing fears about motherhood and uncertainty and the terror of bringing a child into circumstances that felt unstable. Later, Vivian found Marcus in Father Mike's office. I almost lost everything, she said, her hand on her stomach. I was 61 days from foreclosure. 1 month away from being her, homeless, pregnant, terrified. The only difference between us is that I had you. She had nobody. Her voice shook. I can't stop thinking about how close I was. How easily that could have been me serving meals instead of being served them. Brandon had transformed himself into the volunteer coordinator, bringing his organizational skills to bear on the shelter's chaotic systems. He created schedules, optimized supply chains, implemented inventory tracking that actually worked. He'd recruited Aunt Melissa and cousin Jennifer to form a fundraising committee that had somehow raised 200,000 yuan in a single benefit event. Leveraging their social connections in ways that actually helped people rather than just generating social media content, cousin Jennifer had started a financial literacy program, teaching residents about credit scores and budgeting and how to navigate the labyrinthine social services bureaucracy. Her surgeon husband donated time providing free medical checkups, treating conditions that would have otherwise gone untreated until they became emergencies. 3 months after the revelation, the family gathered for the foundation's first official board meeting. Chen Property Holdings had moved to a larger space in the commercial district, still modest but professional, with actual conference rooms and space for the foundation's growing operations. The walls were decorated with photographs from the shelter, testimonials from families they'd helped, the kind of impact documentation that Elena insisted on maintaining. Grandmother Lou presided from the head of the table, her presence still commanding despite her small frame. Marcus and Elena sat together, their body language unconsciously synchronized. She touched his arm while making a point. He smiled at her in ways that made several family members exchange knowing glances. The dynamic had shifted from secret to acknowledged, from possibility to reality. First order of business, Grandmother Lou said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd built empires from nothing. Distribution of trust funds. Each family member who has completed the 6-month shelter requirement will now have access to foundation matching funds for charitable giving. She went through the list with methodical precision. Aunt Melissa had qualified, earning 50,000 yuan in matching funds. Brandon had qualified, same amount. Jennifer had qualified. Vivian was still in progress but would qualify after the baby was born and her maternity recovery period ended. Second item, Grandmother Luke continued. Marcus has proposed we expand our mission to include a microloan program for shelter residents starting small businesses. We would provide seed funding, business mentorship, and ongoing support. All in favor, the vote was unanimous, hands rising around the table without hesitation. After the meeting dispersed, Vivian approached Marcus privately, her pregnancy making her movements slow and careful. Derek had already left, giving them space. "I need to say something," Vivian said, her voice tight with emotion. "No Derek, no audience, no performance. Just you and me. Can we talk somewhere private?" Marcus led her to a small conference room. The kind with transparent walls that could opaque for privacy. He activated the privacy setting and waited. Vivian stood by the window, looking out at the city's layers of light and life. "I've been jealous of you since we were kids. Did you know that?" "Since we were maybe 10 years old," Marcus started to respond, but she held up a hand. "You had Sarah, this beautiful, brilliant woman who saw past surfaces to who you really were. You had grandmother's respect without even trying, without performing or striving or broadcasting your achievements. You had purpose. You knew what mattered." She turned to face him, tears already falling. "I've been buying things and chasing followers and building this elaborate facade because I felt empty inside. I thought if I looked successful, I'd eventually feel successful. If I could make other people believe I had everything, maybe I'd start believing it too." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing the tears across her cheeks. "That woman at the shelter, the pregnant one I sat with, she asked me if I was happy. I said yes automatically, didn't even think about it. Then I went home and sat with that answer for days. Weeks. I'm not happy, Marcus. I'm exhausted. I'm broke. I'm about to have a baby and I'm terrified I'll teach them all the wrong values, that I'll pass on this emptiness like a genetic disease." Marcus moved closer, his voice gentle. "You're already teaching them better values just by being there. By trying. By recognizing what needs to change." Vivian laughed bitterly. "Derek and I are selling the house. Moving to something we can actually afford on the mid-tier, probably near your neighborhood actually. We're going to use the equity to pay off our debts and start clean. I'm quitting Instagram. Well, mostly. I'm going to post about real things, not this performative perfection that's been slowly killing me from the inside." She met his eyes directly, her expression raw with vulnerability. "Can you forgive me? For the pregnancy announcement, for years of cruelty, for treating you like garbage because I couldn't face my own emptiness." Marcus pulled her into a hug, feeling her shake against him. "Already forgiven. Weeks ago. The moment you started trying, I forgave everything." "How?" Her voice was muffled against his shoulder. "Why? Because Sarah taught me that resentment is just drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And because you're trying now. That's all any of us can do, try to be better than we were yesterday." That evening, Marcus took Elena to a place he'd avoided for 3 years, the botanical gardens where he and Sarah had gotten married. The hover car settled into the parking area and Elena looked at him with understanding in her eyes, recognizing the significance without needing explanation. They walked through the gardens hand in hand. The air thick with the scent of night-blooming flowers and the distant hum of pollinator drones doing the work that natural insects no longer could in the city's filtered atmosphere. Holographic fireflies drifted between real trees, programmed to enhance the natural beauty without overwhelming it. "Sarah and I made our vows here," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "Under those wisteria vines by the pond. I promised to love her forever, to honor her values over comfort, to build a life of meaning instead of accumulation. When she died, I thought that life died with her. That I'd just be going through the motions until I could join her." They walked slowly, their footsteps quiet on the gravel path. Above them, the real stars were invisible behind the city's light pollution, but the garden's environmental controls had created a pocket of clean air that felt like stepping into the past. Marcus stopped at a bench carved from real wood, preserved and maintained at enormous expense. This is where I proposed to her. 22 years old, absolutely terrified, convinced she'd say no because I was too serious and too focused on my principles instead of my career. Elena sat down beside him, her hand still in his. What did she say? She said yes immediately, then told me she'd been waiting for me to ask for 6 months. That she knew I'd get there eventually, but I needed to arrive at the decision myself instead of being pushed. He smiled at the memory. She was patient with me even then. Marcus turned to face Elena fully, taking both her hands in his. Elena Rodriguez, I'm not going to propose tonight. It's too soon, for both of us, really. You deserve a moment that's entirely yours, not shared with ghosts or weighted with the past. Elena laughed, the sound carrying genuine amusement. Good, because I would have said it's too soon. I'd also have pointed out that you don't have a ring and I have opinions about rings that I haven't shared yet, but I am going to make you a promise. Marcus's voice dropped to something more intense, more certain. I promise to let you see me, all of me, including the broken parts that still miss Sarah. The parts that wake up at 3 in the morning panicking about whether I'm good enough for this second chance. I promise to build something real with you, not hide behind grief as an excuse to avoid risk. I promise to love you the way you deserve, loudly, proudly, without apology or reservation. Elena's eyes shone with tears she wasn't trying to hide. Marcus Chen, I promise to call you on your bullshit when you're being too self-sacrificing or too humble or too eager to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. I promise to protect your big, generous, sometimes infuriatingly noble heart from people who would take advantage of it. And I promise to love you not despite your grief but with it. Because it made you who you are, and who you are is exactly who I want. They kissed under the wisteria vines, the same vines where he'd married Sarah 20 years ago, and it felt like both an ending and a beginning. Like honoring the past while stepping fully into the future. When they pulled apart, Elena grinned with the kind of mischief that had made him fall for her in the first place. Also, I'm officially giving myself a raise. Dating the boss has its perks, and I've been underpaid for years. Marcus laughed. That's embezzlement. Also possibly illegal, sue me. Oh wait, you're not that kind of lawyer. You're not any kind of lawyer. You just have opinions about contracts. Strong opinions. Founded on experience, founded on stubbornness. But I love you anyway. 1 year later, the same mansion where everything had exploded stood ready for Grandmother Lou's 81st birthday. But the atmosphere had transformed entirely, the competitive tension replaced with something warmer, more genuine, more like an actual family gathering instead of a performance. Brandon arrived in a practical Toyota hover car, the kind that prioritized efficiency over status. He brought his new girlfriend, a woman named Michelle who directed a nonprofit focused on housing advocacy. They were clearly in love in the uncomplicated way of people who'd found each other through shared values rather than shared aesthetic preferences. They spent 20 minutes talking to Marcus and Elena about their plans to expand Michelle's organization into 3 new cities. Vivian and Derek appeared with their baby daughter, a beautiful infant with dark eyes and Vivian's delicate features. Vivian looked exhausted in the authentic way of new mothers rather than the performed exhaustion she'd previously cultivated for social media sympathy. When she introduced the baby, her voice broke with emotion. This is Sarah Lou Morrison, she said, looking at Marcus with tears already falling. I wanted her to have a namesake worth aspiring to. Someone who understood what actually matters in life. Marcus held the baby carefully, his hands remembering the weight and fragility of new life, and felt Elena's hand on his back, supportive, present, understanding that this moment carried layers of meaning. Aunt Melissa brought her new partner, a contractor named Robert she'd met at a Habitat for Humanity build site. They were simple together, no performance, no pretense, just two people who'd found each other later in life and were grateful for it. They talked about the house they were renovating together, doing most of the work themselves because Robert insisted she learn how buildings actually functioned. The entire family had shifted toward authenticity. No designer labels broadcasting wealth that might not exist. No neural implants recording every moment for later posting. People had driven practical vehicles and wore comfortable clothes and brought actual food they'd cooked themselves instead of paying caterers to create culinary theater. Marcus and Elena arrived together in his ancient Honda, which Elena had finally stopped threatening to have compacted. She wore a ring on her left hand now, simple, elegant, the same ring Sarah had worn but reset according to Elena's preferences. It was a deliberate choice they'd made together, a way of honoring the past while building something new. The engagement announcement 6 months ago had been met with genuine family celebration, no mockery, no pointed comments about Marcus finally getting his act together. During dinner, catered by Grandmother Lou's original restaurant, the one she'd built from nothing 40 years ago, Grandmother Lou stood to speak. The room fell quiet with respect rather than fear. Last year at my 80th birthday, I thought I had failed as a matriarch, she said, her voice carrying the weight of lived experience. I had raised grandchildren who valued possessions over people, who measured worth in followers and portfolio valuations. I was ashamed of what I'd created despite my intentions. The family listened without defensiveness, understanding that this was acknowledgement rather than attack. This year, I'm proud. You learned. You changed. You recognized what mattered and had the courage to transform yourselves. She looked directly at Marcus. Thank you for being the teacher they needed, even when it cost you. Even when they hurt you. Thank you for showing them that real wealth is measured in lives improved rather than appearances maintained. Marcus felt Elena squeeze his hand under the table. They taught me too, grandmother. I learned that I can't hide from life to avoid pain. That boundaries aren't cruelty. They're necessary. And I learned that it's okay to choose happiness again, to build a future instead of just maintaining a memorial to the past. Brandon stood, his glass raised. Last year I toasted to grandmother's legacy of success. I was wrong about what that meant. Her real legacy isn't the wealth she accumulated. It's the resilience she demonstrated, the values she maintained, the courage to start over when you realize you've lost your way. He met Marcus's eyes across the table. To Grandmother Lou, who gave us everything, then taught us what everything really means. To Grandmother Lou. The chorus echoed around the table with genuine warmth, glasses rising in unison. The gesture carrying real feeling instead of social obligation. After dinner, Marcus and Elena slipped away to the terrace, the same place where they'd first confessed their feelings a year ago. The city spread below them in layers of light, a vertical tapestry of lives lived in ignorance of this small transformation happening in a mansion high above. Elena leaned against the railing, the night air moving through her hair. So, Mr. Chen. What's next for us? World domination? Hostile takeovers? Finally admitting that your Honda needs to be retired, Marcus laughed, moving to stand beside her. Well, Ms. Rodriguez-Chen, I'm hyphenating. Rodriguez-Chen. This is non-negotiable. Noted and accepted. I was thinking we expand the foundation nationally. Use our model to help more families avoid foreclosure, create more success stories like Deshawn. More second chances. Maybe partner with other shelters, train them on our approach. Elena turned to face him fully, her expression serious despite the playful tone. I love it. Also, I want kids. Eventually. Not immediately, but in the next few years. Is that something you? Yes. Marcus didn't hesitate. Sarah and I always wanted children, but the business was demanding and then she got sick and we ran out of time. Having them with you would honor her memory in the best possible way, by choosing life, by continuing instead of stopping. Elena leaned into him, her head against his chest. You know what I love most about us? We're not a fairy tale. We're messy and built on loss and growth and the courage to try again. That's so much better than perfect. We're also about to be late for our own engagement party because Vivian will definitely notice if we're gone too long and she'll assume we're making out on the terrace. Elena pulled back, grinning. We could make her assumption accurate, later. When we don't have 20 family members waiting inside, fine. But tonight when we get home, I'm burning that Stanford t-shirt. I've been patient for a year, but my patience has limits, over my dead body. That shirt is vintage. That can be arranged, mi amor. I know people. I have connections. They returned to the party hand in hand, visible through the transparent walls to the family gathering inside. Through the window, Marcus could see grandmother Lou holding baby Sarah, Brandon and Michelle talking intensely about their next project, Aunt Melissa laughing at something Robert said, the kind of genuine laughter that came from real happiness rather than social performance. Grandmother Lou caught his eye through the glass and raised her glass to him, a private acknowledgement between them, a recognition of the journey they'd taken together. Marcus mouthed, "Thank you," she mouthed back. "Thanks, Sarah." And Liv, he took Elena's hand and led her back inside, back to the family they'd helped transform, back to the future they were building together. On a side table near the entrance, Marcus noticed a framed photograph that hadn't been there earlier, Sarah smiling from their wedding day, placed deliberately where it would be seen. Included, honored, remembered, but no longer haunting, she was part of the story, but not the end of it. That ending was still being written, one deliberate choice at a time, in the spaces between grief and joy, between memory and possibility, between the person he'd been and the person he was becoming. The future stretched ahead like an open road, and for the first time in 3 years, Marcus was ready to travel it.